All right, and we're back over here now. Woo, woo, woo. You guys been waiting? Have you been watching Mark over there? That was pretty cool, right? We're not even going to do this. We're going to chill out. I want to take a puff, get some water. We're going to read something. You guys see Donald Trump actually tweeted me? Yeah, every time that happens, I get a lot of fan mail. Let me tell you. Every time that happens, I get a lot of fan mail. But I want to show you something first before. There it is. Okay. I just want to be able to get this for you so I can show you kind of what prompted this a bit. Okay. Oh, I should have sent it to Mark on Twitter. Yeah, let me send it to Mark on Twitter. All right. All right. Pumping. It's Wednesday. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. That was fun. I hope you guys were all over there checking out Mark. Don't forget to circle on back when you do. Mark's going to come over here in a second. I just sent him the StreamYard link. All right. I want to read you a couple definitions. We're going to get into that before Mark gets on. But first, I want to show you what prompted this conversation today. All right. This little debate. And I got to close my screen so I don't give anybody's, personal information away. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them, share them far and wide. The best place to follow us is over on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. And we have seen some generous giving today. And generous giving. I don't know where this is coming from, but I thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. We're absolutely going to make this poll. It's an important poll to make sure that we get, because it will get a lot of attention. I guarantee you that. Okay. Let's first bring up and defend what I said, because we're going to talk about it and I'm going to defend it. 100% I'm going to defend it. My own father watches this show. He's a boomer, and I am going to defend it to my dad, who, by the way, agrees with me. All right. At least on most of what I'm saying. Mike Cernovich first said, and this is indicative of what's going on with this conversation and what happened with Canada, but it's also happening in the entire Western world. Pierre Poilievre did not awaken the masculine energy of Canada in the way Trump did in 2016, and especially in 2014. Boomers are aging out and are brainwashed by cable news. You need young men to vote. You must have a fighting spirit to inspire them too. Mike just said in a very layman way what I have been trying to say in a more, using the language and vocabulary of the industry, mixed with a way that viewers at home can understand. And I really think that that's our niche, that's our space, and that's why we're successful. All right? This is what I said in response, and then we will get to what I said after this, which is a longer thread, which is going to go viral. If it hasn't, it really has already. I'm getting calls from media organizations. So that means I saw that. I got one before I realized that it had been shared so much. I wrote this first in a quote tweet to his original tweet. Boomers took the easy way out and quite literally wrecked Western civilization. It's stunning to me how anyone could convince themselves that they're suddenly going to put anyone other than themselves first. And then I thought it over and I said, you know what? I want to elaborate a little bit more about this. And where you go down here. All right. Their parents won the Second World War. They won. And actually, here's Mark. Mark, can I bring you on while I read this? Is that cool? Or you need a minute? You're good? Okay. So I want to bring Mark on to read this with us as I read this, okay? Their parents won. Their The Second World War. That's my grandfather, my grandmother, her brother Mario, who got shot down over France, and by the way, was thought to have died before he was shot down and before he landed. In fact, I later, doing some digging, and unfortunately, it was after my grandmother passed away, found out that he was in fact alive when the plane crashed. The Germans took him out and executed him. Okay. He had a severe brain injury. They probably were thinking back then, maybe just put him out of his misery, but unfortunately he was a tail gunner and he went down and, or Turk, the ball. Yeah. And I found news clippings and everything from a Nazi controlled French paper that directly named him and said that he was conscious and alive when they approached the crash. He was suffering from a severe head wound and he was executed. Right? So this is the generation that won the Second World War. They also, by the way, consequently, Mark, migrated here legally. Okay. And would absolutely, and did still, did until their dying day, oppose illegal immigration with every fiber in their being, even though they were happy to support immigrants who came here legally. Their children, however, and of course, when I say they, I'm wanting people to use their imagination. Their parents won the Second World War. I'm trying to get people to think.
Survived the Great Depression, too. Grew up in the Great Depression. Yeah. Probably worked at the tender age of 6 to put food on the table.
And never wanted to get in a bread line or a soup line or anything. Never wanted to take the government cheese. And even though many of them did, they were ashamed to do it. I remember my grandmother recounting when FDR's reforms went in place. She, with grandpa overseas, she had no choice to go. Not often. She didn't do it often at all. I think she did it once, maybe twice. She hated it. And the shame that you could see on her face from doing it. All right. Now, just keep that in mind. I'm not saying that you should be ashamed when you need help. All right. If sometimes people need help, the difference is these people understood they would rather work for something. All right. Let's not pretend as if there isn't an element in the society that aren't looking for a hand up. They're looking for a handout. But their parents won the Second World War. They all but destroyed the family unit after wasting their youth in a counterculture movement that fueled massive divorce rates, childhood mental illness, and unstable family units, which now has resulted in neutered masculinity and replacing essential male role models in society with hormone blockers for teenagers. If you are what did you call us before, Mark? What are we?
Zennial.
Zennial.
The best of both worlds. Yep.
If you're a Zennial, you know damn well that your parents and school nurses, if you were maybe a little bit rambunctious, especially guys, you know what I'm talking about. Beep, beep. Mrs. So-and-so, can we please have Rich down to the nurse's office? It's time to take his Ritalin, right? This is what they did to us. And because this was a generation of taking the easy road, they allowed it to happen. Now we know that little Johnny didn't have a chemical imbalance. He was not suffering from chemical imbalance induced in depression. He was suffering from depression because his mother was a skank who cheated on his father, and their parents got divorced because they were children of the 60s, and they would rather sit around and drink and smoke pot instead of raise their damn children or make their marriage work. I mean, should I get more into any of the gory details? All right. You guys know what the hell I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. 2. They then would go on to trade our middle class and manufacturing base for cheap shit, disability and welfare checks, embracing globalism, while China and organized crime, like the cartels in Latin America, from first it was Colombia, of course, and then it became Mexico, cheered over how much easier it would be to flood the country with drugs and trash products, especially counterfeit shit, things that kill people, things that are dangerous. You would not have found that back then, before this, folks. Then, on top of it, they voted for politicians bankrolled by pill pushers like Purdue Pharma, right? Who manufactured Mother's Little Helpers for entire regions of the country that were hollowed out by these policies. Think the Appalachia, right? Think Eastern Ohio and the Ohio River Valley. Think West Virginia. Think I don't know, 54 out of all the counties in Pennsylvania. Think southeastern Michigan. Think the Upper Peninsula, even though some of that, was just rural. But, the industrialized base of Michigan being in the southeast. Think of that. Think what happened to whole neighborhoods in the city of Detroit. Okay, think about parts of Illinois. Think about mid-Atlantic manufacturing, even all the way as far as New Jersey, Mark. Even as far as New Jersey. Who needs the integrity of work when you have an oxy? Am I right? All of which requires a slave class, these virtuous people, these so very virtuous people, right? In the third world and emerging countries, working for a bowl of rice until they finally just give up, Mark, and jump off the effing roof of the Apple building, right? And so they can have an affordable iPhone. We're duped. They were duped by every single myth of empire ever told by a ruling class to a citizenry population to get them to support illegal wars that squandered our national wealth, killed innocent civilians abroad, and sent their own children to fight in wars that they had no way to care for them when they came home. 5, ran up a national debt larger than all other generations combined. But they care only about the solvency of the government and Social Security until their own deaths. Once they depart from the earth, they couldn't give two shits what happens to the rest of us they leave behind. And that includes their own kids and their grandkids. Supported politicians on both sides because they promised them homes they could not afford, collapsed the economy because of it, and destroyed the American dream for at least a generation. And they still, going to what Mike said about brainwashed by cable news, they still consume, it's more than just cable, all the same sources of information they did before, which led to these follies, and act as if they're the credible and intelligent ones. And that's the rub, as if anyone who still doesn't believe the idiots who lied to them all these decades, then they're stupid or something. And sure, Republicans could continue to obsess and try to win them over, or they could just simply motivate the people Mike was talking about, the younger generations that you and I are measuring in our polling. They are victims of these actions. It seems to me that it really shouldn't be that difficult to motivate them if they just get out of their own way. They're victims of these actions, and by the way, countless others that I omitted out of plain exhaustion in this post. Because after a while, it just became so damn much. I think you get the point. They inherited a superpower on the rise. And they passed us a declining superpower. Like Rome, not 200 years, not 400 years, not 1,000 years later. They inherited the emergence of an era of great human progress, and they handed us back the fucking dark ages. And we're supposed to pretend as if there's nothing to say here because it's a political third rail. We're just supposed to let them insult us. These kids are paranoid. These voters are stupid. Black voters don't know what's good for them anymore. Maybe Hispanics, they just like machismo, and it has nothing to do with policy or opportunity, right? Like, I'm so tired of them insulting every other block of this country, and they're all victims. They're all victims. And we're not supposed to say anything because, well, why? Why is the boomer generation a protected generation? When did they become a protected class? Everything I just said right there is 100% true. Nobody could argue with the validity of what I just said. Why focus on them? Here's the cold, hard truth. They're not the future. They're going to be gone soon. Why would you ever move to placate them and pander to them when their victims are a growing sector of the population and the future? Are you trying to be the party of now, or are you trying to be the party of right now and later and a bunch of whole later decades after that? Like, what makes no sense to me, Mark? Like, as a strategy, it makes no sense to me. Why? Because you want to win a stupid midterm? I mean,
I know the strategy. I'll tell you exactly what the strategy is. Listen, this is, we're not painting with a broad brush here. There are millions of people, probably our supporters who are following us right now, who have defied the odds. And we are not talking to you, But you can't address these issues without looking at societal trends. And this comes back
Yes.
to, in my opinion, the fourth turning. And to some extent, maybe the boomers fell victim to these waves as well. It's just part of what humanity goes through. But they were preceded by a great generation that built strong, values-oriented institutions, and they reflexively ripped those institutions apart and focused on individuality, and then created a new set of values that worked pretty well for them, I think, right? And those are things that are not good for current situation. Like fake virtues and moral authority and things like, well, our kids can't read right now. They don't know how to do math. But we have to treat them all equally. Everybody's got to be in the same classroom. Everybody gets a participation trophy. You can't hurt the feelings. Well, those are objectively horrible ways to do your best in educating it, like just as one example. And so the same thing with globalization, shipping the jobs overseas. Well, that's great that you're leading the department and division that's doing that. But what about the Zoomers who are now competing with the flood of H-1Bs or getting all of their work outsourced? And it's going to accelerate. And so ultimately, I think it comes down to, though, is that there's a lot of people who have done very well under the new system. And if you're doing well, you don't want it to change. And so what are you going to do?
Right.
You're going to play to the people who built it. And here's a very uncomfortable truth for the boomers. Your system is going to be ripped down by people younger than you now.
Yep.
It's happening. It's going to happen. It's inescapable. So just get on the right side of history.
Just get on the right. Oh man, what a way to put it. Just get on the right side of history. Because right now you're going down as one of the most selfish, irresponsible groups of people. And by the way, again, pretentious and narcissistic. All right. Because you think you're better than everybody. It's unbelievable. It's truly remarkable. You supported a Ponzi scheme. All right. And I am one of those people who do believe that the government has to, and I argued this during the election, like you have to maintain the policy position that Donald Trump has, not because it's smart, but also because it is the morally right thing to do. These people were promised a certain standard of living. But guess what? It's time to wake up to reality. Maybe if they wanted that standard of living, Mark, they shouldn't have blown all of our prosperity. Okay, they shouldn't have. I mean, shall I go to the debt clock right now? Should we take a look at it? It's been a while. I mean, can anyone?
Wait, one second. You got to go to one other thing first. Hold on. Put my screen up, Rich. It's not just there's so many lies that were that they fell prey to. You know what I mean? Like
I remember seeing. I actually
so many lies.
Yeah.
We need to spread our democracy with bombs and bullets across the world, like in a Clancy novel.
Meanwhile, there's another one. I have been getting text messages from people who are left and right, including those who ran for office. Everybody knows, because if you've been in this space and you're a pollster or you're a political candidate, maybe you're an elected official because you were once a political candidate and you knocked on doors. I can't tell you in 2022 how many people directly told us they didn't care about the cost of living crisis. They're on a fixed income and they're making it. You know, what about the kids who are struggling? What about the workers who are struggling? They didn't care. They couldn't care less at all. And I am getting messages of support today from everywhere saying nobody will ever admit it because maybe they want to run again. Maybe they want to hold their seat because, of course, boomers vote. But it is like in the 90s when we would have these discussions over senior citizens maybe should not be allowed to drive forever. It was always a joke that everyone knows that, but no one's going to propose it because seniors vote and they're afraid that they'll lose their seat. So instead, we just have to deal with Fred. We just have to deal with Fred and Estelle ramming in the innocent people every once in a while because nobody's got the courage to say that they shouldn't have a driver's license anymore.
Or fund some super expensive taxpayer program to cart them around too, right?
There it is. Right. Exactly. Right. Now this is today's version of that. Right. Where
their parents like probably bunked in a room with 10 kids, right? And they don't want to like move in with theirs to, I mean, like that's what it is.
That's actually, I don't have it here, but I actually make this point what was it? The book was published in 2013, and I actually made this point back then. It's a different standard of living that they're requesting, and the concept, the word, folks, you might be surprised to find this to be true, but it is. The concept of retirement in the United States of America is a relatively new concept as you understand it today, right? People worked until they really just couldn't or didn't want to work anymore, not because they were working themselves to death out of necessity. They wanted to work. They believed in something called the calling, and whether or not they understood it to be that later on in later generations is irrelevant. They were taking that national identity. It was only until the later the Great Society, but it started with the New Deal, that the concept of retirement as we know it today was born, and not even my grandparents, your grandparents, and those generations had fully bought into it. It almost got rolled back. What we now know today as Social Security was known back then as old age insurance. And that was part of the New Deal. And it was not widely accepted even by people who needed it. Why? Because you had your parents, when they got older, Mark, live with you. And, I mean, you were a family unit. You were a stronger nuclear family. And now we don't have that. So they are feeling entitled to live in a standard that prior generations weren't. And I'm not saying it isn't possible for them to live.
A great standard was created for them. They bought their houses with cash on one income.
$5,000.
And they said they told their kids that to build wealth, you need to buy a house too. Why can't you buy a house? What's wrong with that? You buy a house. They're giving you free money. You got a 30-year mortgage.
And if you have a problem, you can always. If you have a problem, you can always refinance. Let's take out reverse mortgages. Let's do this. Let's do that. I mean,
never mind, an employer will employ you for 2 years and then fire you to hire an H-1B, and you got to move across the country. Like, never mind. Because they can look at 5,000 resumes. You can't just walk down the street to the only company in town and get hired for a 30-year career in management.
Yeah. That's right.
Remember the movies in the 80s about, what was the name of that movie? Was Michael J. Fox in it? What's the movie where he started as a mail boy? It wasn't Michael J. Fox. You know what I'm talking about?
Hold on.
That's what people thought corporate life was. I'm going to find it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Right?
Yes,
I grew up in that movie. It was him. It was Secret of My Success.
Secret of My Success.
Yeah.
Yes. And by the way, this is another great example. That was Michael J. Fox was a star portraying many different characters that was a blowback or a rejection of the boomers' youth, that counterculture movement that they squandered their youth in. Family ties. Okay. Look, they're two hippie parents who are basically they're constantly on the seat of their, what. It's not them who are holding the family together in family ties. It's Michael J. Fox and conservative children that they had that are, think about Eve. That is reflective of, it's a repudiation. It was culture's repudiation of the counterculture movement of the boomers. And the boomers never grew the hell up. Their own kids did, but they never shed the woe was me. Oh, poor me. I inherited the greatest superpower in the world. They never shed that. Michael J. Fox is portraying a young man who's trying to make his way in a world that his parents were protesting against, and he didn't see it as evil. He saw it as opportunity, and he believed in personal responsibility. Who was he the role model of, by the way? Alex, who he played Alex, the oldest son. Who was he the role model of? The youngest brother. Because they would later have another little kid, right? And they're just kind of doing their own damn thing while Alex is trying to be effectively the man of the house. And people that slipped past people during that era. Where we don't have those themed shows anymore. We just don't. Now, of course, that's fine. I mean, things move on, and culture reacts to the challenges of their own day. But it's interesting enough. And Michael J. Fox portrayed that kind of generation, that guy in that generation trying to, be the counter to that. No, I'm not. We should not go down this road. We should continue back. We should right this ship and embrace Reaganism. By the way, Alex is a huge Reagan fan in Family Ties, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so he's a huge Reagan fan. He's trying to say this is the wrong direction. Let's change.
You know what? I was just looking up and I found was interesting. I couldn't find the Family Ties writers, and I'm interested to wonder who they are. But Secret of My Success was written by a boomer. And it's like fantasy about rising to the height of corporate, you know what I mean? But you know what else was written by boomers and I thought was interesting because you brought up Family Ties.
Well, we are generalizing here, like you said before. Like, it's just statistics, how my mind thinks, how your mind thinks. Not every boomer falls in this category, but that mindset is the dominant mindset.
They're speaking to the cultural zeitgeist at the time. So
Yes.
what about All in the Family?
All in the Family.
Very different than Family Ties. Came out back when boomers were younger and dealing with older parents. And it was also written by boomers. Very different parents in that. Curmudgeonly, angry, set in their ways, And now you get the Family Ties and it's like, oh, they're the hippies and the kids are the, like it's just crazy to watch it go through. Like how much of a stamp that they put on the culture through their own. And my dad was the same way, man. That guy listened to Rush Limbaugh more than I did.
Yeah.
And he was great. And I think, I fell prey to some of these lies as well. I was in the military at the time and I'm like, yeah, we should probably go over and pave the Middle East, turn it into glass because we don't want them to come over and shoot us first. And so there's probably weapons of mass destruction, blah, blah, blah. And I realized I had a lot of those views because I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh with my dad, who also had those views. Right. And now in retrospect, he's not with us anymore, but I think like looking around again, I think he would have supported Trump, but I think that he would have been concerned and dismayed by the implications of all of the institutions. Oh, no. The DOD would never steal hundreds of millions of dollars or fund black operations or, like misappropriate billions. Oh, no, there could never be fraud within Social Security. My dad worshipped Alan Greenspan. Everybody thought that guy was a genius. I'm just saying the idea of considering that, no, the Fed is probably not independent and has all of these. And so it's like you grow up in this golden age of largesse. I think they're too naive to the realities of what everybody's dealing with now. Yeah.
They're very naive. And I and Charlie Kirk have had these conversations a lot because he asks prodding questions about what happens during these interviews when you're talking to some of these people and you bring this up. And I mean, this is part of their visceral reaction to Donald Trump. It's just that part of it is they were grown in this very naive period. And now that they're older and they're in their golden years, right? They just want everything to go smoothly. They don't want to believe that the FBI would pull a dark eye on the American public. They never will see them like that, even though they were naive and they didn't understand who someone like a Hoover really was. He wasn't a role model. This guy was a scumbag, right? They're over there protesting as kids, people that they now essentially believe without question, and it's like it's just this only this I hate this, I'm going to use this word, only this collective immaturity could bounce back and forth at a pinball machine like that, Mark. It is naivety. It is, and it's because their parents dealt with the true horrors of the world, made it easy for them, and they resented things about their parents' generation. And I don't get too much into his own personal thing, but my grandfather, he was in World War II. When he came back, things were not the same. He called it shell shock back then. He drank, but he also did. He also, made a living for his family, and he took care of things, right? And it was easy. And my father now would say this and admit this. It was easy to resent him for his shortcomings, right? But only now does he realize how difficult it must have been for him to do that, right? So you grow up, he rejects some of the things, the traditional beliefs and values of at the time anyway of his parents, only to return to them later in life, because you learn. I mean, now not everyone does though, and that's ultimately what we're seeing here. They're not, they want the majority of them, or at least a plurality of them, want what they think is theirs and a standard that they're entitled to, and they're not thinking about what is going to be left when they're gone. And that is easy for people to do. It's the easy path, it's the easy road. And they don't want this massive disruption in the status quo right now, Mark, because they, one of the guys who I was texting with this morning over this was a candidate. We're only even proposing, we're only like people who ran campaigns like his, marginal impacts to their standard of living. You're not even talking about this massive disruption that they fear. You're talking about marginal changes in order to protect the people they will leave behind, and they're not willing to do it. And it's just, frankly, disgusting.
Let me ask you, this is a trend that I've seen, although it's been muted.
Yeah.
And I could probably come up with examples of the disconnect between Zoomers and Boomers here. Like, if China were to invade Taiwan, would you support or oppose the U.S. sending its Navy to defend Taiwan? 23% of 18 to 39-year-olds, 45% of 65 and older strongly support. Stuff like that. But what set you off? Like, what was the signal you saw? Was it the one out of the Canadian polling? Or what would you say the biggest example of the problem that we're talking about is?
I think at this point, I think wow, that was very I mean, you're all generous. But I think at this point it's collectively everything. And yes, I also think that I'm watching boomers and boomer defenders in America defending the justification in Canada for that generation voting the way they did. Meanwhile, just 9:15 this morning, in case our time, Eastern time, in case anybody isn't following along, this is what they may. This is for them being selfish. This may be the end of their country as they know it, or at least the part of their country that feels that they cannot be represented. Yesterday, folks, Prime Minister Smith basically gave everyone an update and said the Citizen Initiative Act, right, which was this initiative to collect signatures to decide whether or not they would trigger a referenda on Alberta's independence. It only had 177,000 signatures yesterday morning. Within a couple hours, it was up to 600,000. The signature period to collect has now been extended from 90 to 120 days. That was yesterday. And then today at 9:30 in the morning, they hit that threshold. So a 9:30 Eastern Standard.
Oh, man.
This is a referendum that has been around for a bit now. And I know, and I guess I can be more open about it now, but Smith had stated to multiple people in both countries her willingness that if this went the way it did, that she would be more open to it, because it effectively means that people are, and I'm trying to be careful with my words, there is a group of people in her country, as there is in ours, and I think we all know who they are. And I'm not like attacking them. I'm identifying them now. They are willing to hurt a lot of people to get their way. And that could include the fracturing of nations. That may be the most collective act, or that may be the biggest act of collective selfishness that has ever come, Mark. That has ever been seen or observed. Meanwhile, we have to listen to the soy beta, whatever you want to, like the soy milk beta, latte drinking loser pundits and cable and TV news, and their stupid simplified takes of, oh, it was Donald Trump that did it. No, this is a bigger problem of this group, being opposed to serious change to the order that you just said. They're going to wreck your order anyway. This is what it really is. And Trump is toxic, not because he's Donald Trump, but Trump is toxic to them because Trump represents that change, right? So, and by the way, I just, Smith, this is the best outcome. If you are Donald Trump and you support Trump and his agenda and what he's trying to do, which is effectively change the world order, if you do support that, you should be happy with the outcome of the Canadian election. Now, it's
this
sad,
is smart,
but
this is really smart.
I'm shocked by the level of sophistication for this plan to get Alberta to succeed. I'm stunned by how much thought people not only done, because apparently, as I understand that, and as I'm being told by people,
you think it was 4D chess?
It is 4D chess for once, which I never.
Well, they came and visited him about right around the time like he got in office. Didn't Alberta send somebody down and they talked about it? So I think it really smart.
For a while, it has, and he thought about this in his first administration, in his first term. He really has always wanted Alberta. He didn't just say Alberta when he went on, TV, or he went in front of.
He's going to get Saskatchewan too. Yeah,
he might get. And because they are well aware of what could be a domino effect, but they don't want it to ripple too much because you don't want to add another California. You know what I mean? You just don't want to do that. So yeah.
Well, I had to get smart on Canada because I was so embarrassingly ignorant. And I met a great woman, Nadine Ness, from Saskatchewan, and talked. And we also, I went down the rabbit hole on some videos. What If Alt Hist has a really good video on how Canada implodes. But here's my read on the whole thing. They never really had their hooks into Quebec. Gosh, that was an ignorant sounding. Quebec, they've had to buy them off. They want to get independent. And so that's a big problem, sort of Damocles hanging over the head of Canada. And then you have all of this liberal metropolitan area in Ontario, aging demographic wave, being flooded with immigrants that aren't adding much to the economy.
Yeah.
And so the trend is apparently that the resource-based economy of Alberta and Saskatchewan, who are supplying and bringing in money, will ultimately wind up subsidizing all of those people in the liberal areas. And so if they're not represented, it's just a matter of time before they leave because they are the heart of Canada worth keeping. And they're conservative.
And this is and the blow to globalism with this dynamic is happening everywhere. Eastern Ukraine is the productive part of the country. The West of Kiev, they're takers, and Putin's going to get that. And Putin's new brand, I mean, they're not getting that back. And we see the same thing when it comes to Canada. It's like you have a group of people who have effectively lived off the hard work and suffering of others. And that standard of life that they are demanding comes at the expense of those people's happiness and those people's opportunity. And they just expect this order to continue, and any threat to it, that may arise, they try to demean. They try to, make it like it's not justified or something, like these grievances aren't legitimate. This can't continue forever. It just can't. And it's like we're all in this struggle because of their inability to recognize their own failures and their own negative impact on a lot of other people. And you brought up Mark Halpern before in polling. And by the way, I noticed Mark hasn't had either one of us on to discuss whether or not Ann Sullivan's methodology is sound. Okay, I mean, it's such a freaking joke. And I like Mark. He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy, but
he's got some blind spots.
He's got some big blind spots, and that's from that's from years and years being in the space and existing in the space he has. I mean, that's kind of brings it down to what we're talking about. It's human nature. It's hard to get past those blind spots that we have. And we all have them, but not all of our blind spots hurt so many people, and that's really what it comes down to. And this generation. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about one that's in Great Britain or one that's in the United States or one that's in Canada or one that's in France. I mean, it is this entire generation throughout the Western world. The same thing we see happening constantly. They seem to not care about the hurt they're imposing on others or the damage that they have already done and how much they're going to hurt others even more by refusing to allow the people who are the victims here to try to save themselves, Mark. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. These younger generations are trying to save themselves from the shit that they have, the shitstorm that they have rustled up, and they are doing everything in their political power to stop that. And that's sad. And I bring it up, Mark, for a reason. There was one woman Mark had interviewed in Pennsylvania before the election, and she was undecided, and she decided to vote for Trump. And I thought it was important to highlight her because if she wasn't boomer, she was on the, younger spectrum of maybe just not a boomer. She said, I'm going to vote for Trump because the condition of the condition of other people matter, and I was just like, oh my God, if everyone thought like this woman, if everyone was as virtuous as this woman, like this never would have happened. All of this would not have been squandered. Manufacturing bases wouldn't have been demolished. Communities wouldn't have been hollowed out.
Let's not forget the corporate oligarchy too, Rich. Well, because it's so perverse. There's so many ways to think about how perverse this is. Yeah. So the boomers, so you have tech. You have the Silicon Valley people who are taking probably teacher pension money to invest in very risky alternative investments. They build Airbnb, and everybody's like, oh, we disrupted a market. Oh, it's so great. We built so much equity value. Then you have boomers buying up Airbnbs with both hands and feet. Right. Then you have Zoomers unable to form families because they can't buy a house because the boomers got an Airbnb. Then you got Elon Musk saying, oh, the population collapse. Everybody's got to have 10 babies because one of those babies has to buy a Tesla. But you can't afford a house because the Silicon Valley people have Airbnbs. And not only that, they're not even going to get married because all of the eligible women are on OnlyFans, and the only way they can find people is through Tinder, and they're not going to church because the church got taken over by crazy boomer virtue signalers that turned it into a progressive political action committee. Like, that's where we're at. I mean, it's like, it's the most perverse thing. It's hard to just generalize this. Give me 5 minutes to breathe, and I'll come up with another one even sicker. Like, that's
so good.
How bad this is.
So it really is. So that was so good because it's so true. And by the way, maybe they can't even form healthy, long-lasting relationships because the boomers poisoned their brains during childhood with drugs that were prescribed for diseases that we now know don't even exist, all because they didn't want to have to deal with it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. They didn't want to have to parent because they blew their own marriages, and
redefine marriage,
and then redefined it. They they destroyed the institution of marriage and then completely redefined it, and it's like, it's so funny because my wife and we discussed this a lot. My dad, like I said, he's fantastic because he doesn't even argue with it. He's like, yep, pretty much. I married the wrong woman. I screwed up, like pretty much that's it in a nutshell. But the vast majority of the rest of our family, tend to disagree. Well, shocker, because it's always hard to admit when you're the one who's at fault. It's hard to take a look in the mirror.
Yeah.
It is.
But we know we're pollsters. We can see the signals. We know who's Rich, let me ask you this one. Check this question out. Maybe I'll put it in the field. I don't know. How do you think the numbers would break? Which are you more afraid of? Inflation or deflation?
Ooh. Well, there is one thing, though, I would point out. It may be a little bit hard to pull that because I wonder how many people could define deflation. Boomers probably can, actually. They probably can, more so than maybe some other groups. But that is a good one. And how down? Well,
I think boomers are going to be afraid as hell. It's like, how do you get the people who really understand? But they're like, think about our entire system that they built.
You get them to choose. The correct answer for the definition of each, and then you isolate them and ask.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you nest the people who could correctly identify the definitions. You nest them and you separate them from the rest of the sample, and we look from there.
Yeah.
That's
Because boomers get screwed in a deflationary environment, and personally, in my opinion, I don't think we should be afraid of one. I think that's part and parcel.
Like necessary. It might be absolutely necessary. Like what Trump is doing, no other president would even try to do because they're trying to get reelected. But it's necessary. It has to be done. Like, or we continue down this path and everything collapses. Mark, I mean, what's the alternative? They're honestly hoping that they can just live out their lives, the rest of their lives, before that happens. And I've had folks, let me be very clear. I've had boomers tell me they don't give a shit as long as they're dead first. I mean, I hear this a lot from them. We hear this a lot. Well, what about if there is a complete debt bomb and we can't even service the debt for defense, like to be able to pay for national defense, core function of the government. I don't care as long as I'm gone. I'll be dead in the ground before that happens. Like, this is a common response. I'm not picking on them. I'm identifying their attitude and I'm trying to convey that to you. Now, maybe you at home, you're like, well, I'm a boomer and I'm not like that. Okay. And I'm telling you, you're part of a demographic that is like that. And good for you that you don't reflect that ugly part of the demographic. But make no mistake, that is a huge part of the demographic. And that's why they vote the way they do. Sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought. I just wanted everyone to understand. Like, I'm not coming out of nowhere with this. I guess I just got tired. Of fielding these freaking responses, and then like, in Canada, you're just seeing it as an act of voting is an act of affirmation that I'm right about how I'm gauging these people. And, they could care less. This wasn't an act of nationalism, folks. All right. Everyone keeps talking about how, carny harness nationalism against Trump. Get it out of here. Poilievre did the same thing. He denounced Trump. He tried to rally Canadian nationalism. This wasn't an act of nationalism. Nationalism is typically a sacrifice for the collective national good. This was an act of selfishness, individual selfishness. All right? Come on. There's a difference. Please don't mistake them. That's why people like Guy Benson are driving me nuts. It makes that explanation feels good to him because it helps Guy make sense of the world that he thought he knew. Right? The blame Trumpism worldview, like for everything. That helps Guy make sense of the world. And that's all he's trying to do. He's not trying to convey to you, or analyze the situation as it is and analyze the world as it is. Or he's trying to come up with an explanation that helps him make sense of things because of how he sees the world. He's not trying to give you any information or enlighten you about what's going on. That's how he sees it. So it makes sense and it fits in his tiny little brain. It fits and it makes the world make sense again. But that's not really the sum total of what's happening here. And he makes it out when he's doing that. It's not just him, but others. When they do this, they give you the false impression that this was some kind of collective act of nationalism and we pulled together against the big bad Trump. No, they didn't give a shit about their fellow neighbor. They cared about their own situation. They don't want to pay any more. They don't want to reform the social state. They don't want to do any of this. And it has nothing to do with how it's going to make their neighbor down the road feel. If they cared about that, they would be thinking about the mess, the financial, the fiscal, and the social and moral disaster that they have left behind, that they are about to leave behind. This is not about what's good for our fellow neighbor or our children and our grandchildren. It's about what was good for them. It is narcissism, Mark. It's narcissism. Let's call it what it is.
I feel like the original MAGA platform was patriotic and nationalistic, but only as like a branding veneer. I know that sounds cynical, but it was like people understood we're stopping the invasion at the border. We are holding China accountable. There were like a list of grievances, right? And it was all bundled up into a platform because Donald Trump does a good job at branding. And so the CPC was winning in the polls because Trudeau sucked. Trudeau disappears. Well, you haven't done the hard work to build a platform. So those people
Exactly.
had nothing to vote for, period, whatsoever. And that should be a list A, B, and C of why you would vote for us, and then maybe slap a red maple leaf on top of it, right? And that all they had was the red maple leaf. And I'm sorry, when it comes down to it, it was just two liberals yelling at Trump, and the most liberal one's going to win in an outrage battle, and they did. So
a bunch of so-called Reagan lovers, right? A self-proclaimed Reagan lovers, because that's all these like blame Trumpism, never Trumpers are, right? Reagan would be disgusted with them and how they speak and their explanations and their takes, their hot takes. He'd be disgusted with them. He would say he lost because he tried to be Carney light. Because you can't beat somebody by being a light version of their own game. You have to do what? What did Reagan say? Bold colors, not pale pastels. That's how you paint a picture that makes you different from your opponent. You have to believe in something. There were tons of voters in 1980, by the way, who didn't agree with Reagan on everything. But they gave tons. But he won them. He won a lot of those people.
I got to show you something, Rich. I haven't had a chance to show you this. Let me, you're going to like this. So people were talking about Trump approval, right? And it's like, okay, that's one way to measure how great Trump is.
Yeah, but like, according to who? According to
let's talk about one that isn't polling, okay? And so what I did is I took the percent turnout of the voting eligible people or age people, right? And then I just took the winner's share of the national popular vote. So what that means is like what percent of eligible voters did that president get to show up at the electoral booth? They just got him to turn out. And when you rank it that way, Trump 2 beats JFK, George W. Bush 2, Obama 2, Reagan 1, FDR 4, Bush, Carter, Trump 1 by a lot, Nixon 1, W 1, Truman, and both Clintons.
And let's be clear, Biden only has a higher percentage because those votes aren't real. That's
that's that big black asterisk, the highest turnout ever.
Unsolicited mail-in voting that isn't real. And I mean, I could show you right now, Mark. I keep these images loaded up all this time later, just so when people listening to the show go, "Oh, here we go again, Rich. Come on, Rich. It's debunked, Rich." This is somebody from the state of California, as you can see. Or, this is Los Angeles. None of those ballots belong to them, yet they were all sent without solicitation to his residence. All right? And you can see right there, it says official ballot. There are 4 of them. If he was a liberal who hated Donald Trump, he could fill every single one of them out for Joe Biden and mail them back in. And let's face it, nobody is going to verify those signatures. Okay? Here's actually another batch from Florida. And it was interesting. I like to keep this because this was going to happen. Or is this the Florida one? It's hard for me to see. But in any event, they were going to go out. It was basically a warning that was like reverse solicitation mark. So like, if this doesn't belong to you, let us know. Okay. Well, how could if you're
this is relevant. Hold on.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I know where you're going with this. Of
the 30% of respondents who say they voted by absentee or mail-in ballot during the 2020 election, did you, a friend or family member, fill out your ballot? 19% say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Did you fill out a ballot on behalf of a friend or family member? 21% say yes. Did you sign a ballot or ballot envelope on behalf of a friend and family member without their permission? 17% say yes.
There you go.
Did you sign a ballot? I mean, it keeps going. Did you did a family or friend or organization offer to pay or reward you for voting? Like on and on and on. I think the headline number here was like 28% of mail-in ballot people like verbally admitted to committing at least one form of fraud. Like we had out-of-state voting there. Like we had all that stuff in this poll. It was crazy. That's a lot of fraud.
You're admitting to a crime, and let's take it for like their psychology of some of these people. Okay, you have somebody like Reality Winner, who is willing to leak classified documents, SARS, special activities reports, all sorts of stuff in order to get the big bad Donald Trump, who the media has convinced her is Hitler. Okay. She gives up not only her career to do this, but her freedom. She risks it all. You're telling me if this arrives at Reality Winner's address, she doesn't fill in those ballots and send them back in? Of course she does. All right. You have Mr. Wolf. Let's talk about Mr. Wolf, a fixture, a permanent fixture, and well-liked guy for God over a decade and a half at the Senate. He is trying to, I mean, part of it was he was trying to bang somebody, some female journalist at the New York Times, and was trying to be cool. But another thing was, you know, he's part of the Foreign Relations Committee, a fixture in the Foreign Relations Committee and the security oversight, intelligence oversight, you know, hanging around the likes of people like Richard Burr and, you know, Dianne Feinstein for years, right? I mean, this is what he does, talking with his friends over in the intel agencies, and you know they all can't stand Donald Trump, and you know they all know that the Russia collusion hoax is fake and everything. But he gets I think he was sentenced to like a year in jail or something for what he did again. So if he's willing to do that, you're telling me Mr. Wolf, if he gets these ballots mailed to his address, Mr. Wolf isn't filling in those ballots and sending them in when they don't belong to him. I could go on and on and on because of course the high profile examples of this, a Secret Service agent who said that if she had to, and this was during Trump's first presidency, first term as president, if it came down to it, she not only would not do her job, but she would never take a bullet for Donald Trump, and she would let him get shot. A woman gives up her career, all right, and says something so stupid like that, posts it publicly on Facebook. You're telling me if she gets these ballots and they arrive at her house, she's not going to fill those ballots in and send them in? Of course she is. And there are millions and millions and millions of examples of mentally ill people that they harness, all right? They harness this and turn it into a political force, a political power, and effectively outsource ballot stuffing all across the country. And it's decentralized because you have enough people mentally ill and unstable who are looking to do something like that and are willing to take that risk because in their minds, they're the good guys in their story anyway, Mark. Yeah. It's not that they're breaking the law for a bad reason.
No, it's the people who lived through the radicalization of the 60s and 70s, and this is the legacy. Our polling showed 1 in 5 voters in the swing states, 20%, 20% in 2020 said they got at least one extra mail-in ballot at their address to somebody who doesn't live there. So the ballots were out there, but this is the legacy of the institutional destruction that happened. You know, like go back and watch, old stuff on the History Channel or watch Captain America, the First Avenger, and just think back to like people were willing to jump on grenades. That's the people that built our institutions. And now our institutional values, aren't like patriotism or, self-sacrifice. It's get Trump.
Yeah.
That's our institutional values, or get Trump.
At all costs, no matter what you do to bring it down, how much you may damage public trust in those institutions. All of the people who said, that he violates or he's a threat to all of these norms and institutions that hold it all together, they in fact are the threat. They are the ones who have done the most damage. I mean, this is, multiple levels of this we could talk about forever, that really stems from all of this. But I would argue, go look at the video of the Department of Justice as Merrick Garland exits the Department of Justice. Who's clapping for him? Who's clapping for him? Who's sitting out there on the stoop? I mean, they're effectively, career boomers who spent their lives in those institutions, and then people who are younger, if they're there, who have been convinced that they are some victims in some way, shape, or form. Like, you can't help after a while, folks, seeing demographics when you're looking at people. And like when you do what Mark and I do, you can't help but to say, that's that kind of person. That's that. You can't help it.
Yeah. The hands-off rallies. It's like, we know who they were. We all know.
We all know.
Rich, I got to bounce. This is an awesome conversation. I'm ready for a trip.
Go ahead, brother. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
It sounds fun. I'm going to go get my son from the bus stop anyway, but tell people where they can find you real quick if you can. Yeah.
Rasmussen_poll on X. Really happy to be here. Always have fun when we get to talk to Rich. And he was just on my show too. If you're tuning in, it's really great. And Honest Pollster on Twitter. Yeah, we usually stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 p.m., but we're taking Friday off. Thanks so much.
All the best, brother. Have fun. Safe travels and have a good time.
All right. Later.
Mark
Thanks.
Mitchell, everybody. Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen Reports. We should do more of those collabs more often. That was fun. All right. Maybe next time we'll try exactly right. But and the relay, right? The redirects. We'll get them in place too, as well. All right, I do have to go get my son as well from the bus. So I'm gonna boogie out of here. But you guys are doing great. I just actually checked it. We're like 64% funded. It's Wednesday. That's a very good little day. I mean, not only day, we've had a decent week. A lot of new contributors to the public polling project, which is really necessary and positive. I wish I would. I'm not going to ask you guys this, but I really do. I would like to know the partisan breakdown of people who support the public polling project. I would like that, but we were way underfunded, and there's some people who's done a lot. I can tell, and there's been some generous contributions. Very, like I said, I'm not good at talking, feeling shit. Okay, thank you for it, and as always, I'll do my best and won't let you guys down. 310. What else? I feel like I'm forgetting something here. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them, to share them far and wide. I didn't do any reads today, but of course, our sponsors are linked below as well, along with the Public Polling Project. 1775 coffee, which I'm drinking on a daily basis. It's delicious and has not hurt my ulcer, which is cool. And the Wellness Company. All right. So with that in mind, I'll let you guys go for the rest of the day, and I will see you guys hopefully tomorrow. I think that's the wise playing anyway, because I think it gets more attention. So, I hope, and then, like I just want to end with this. Again, we speak in generalities because that is the nature of the business here. You could say, survey says, evidence suggests 90% of Italians are pieces of, and I wouldn't be offended because I'm Italian. I would be Mel, you got me wrong, but I may be, if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. But I know I'm different than most people. But the fact is, there's not a whole lot you can argue with in my tweet. There's not a whole lot you can argue with me and Mark and the statements we made in the subcommittee. This is coming down to people who are trying to change the existing the existing status quo and really trying to save themselves. And a group of people who have been handed more than anything else in any other group in the history of human civilization, trying to prevent them from saving themselves. They were handed more than anyone who came before them. They squandered it. And now they're resisting any movement, person, leader, neighbor, whatever it may be, whoever it may be, that is attempting to right the ship and salvage what remains of Western civilization. Think I'm being hyperbolic? I don't give a fuck. All right. None but love for you all, as usual. And I would let Laura do it, but she's obviously not here, so I'll have to do it for her. Deuces! See you guys tomorrow. Deuces.